welcome everybody to this second webinar of the TeRRItoria Final Conference. Today's topic is institutional changes for responsible research and innovation. And before giving the floor to George Eleftherakis, our moderator of today, I would like to remind you a few rules about this webinar. As you could realize, this event is being recorded. We are gonna publish it within a couple of weeks, I would say. We already recorded also the first webinar, which took place last Tuesday, and soon there will be available. We are gonna send you like a follow-up with all the recordings of the videos in case you missed some of them. We are kindly asking you to keep your microphones muted, and in case, turn it on when you would like to make questions, when the moderator, George, is giving you the floor, is opening the floor to the open question for the open debate. When asking a question, please go straight to the point so we can ensure more interaction between the speakers and other participants. We would like to avoid 3 minutes question if it's possible. And you feel free to type any question that you have in the chat. My colleague Ivana will read them when it's possible. So without no further delay, I would like to give the floor to George Eleftherakis, our moderator of today. George, the screen is yours.
So, thank you very much, Giacomo. Allow me also to welcome you all to this second day of our final conference of TeRRItoria project that is entitled Institutional Changes for Responsible Research and Innovation. It's going to be a discussion, big discussion, okay. And I will also introduce you to the speakers that we have. So apart from me that I'm going to coordinate this discussion, we will have Daniele Mezzana from KNI, Desislava Koleva from the Gabrovo Municipality, Christian Mancicone from Arter, Kalitsa Pandazi from the region of Central Macedonia in Greece, Zoya Damjanova from the ARC Fund, Marianne Horlesberger from the Austrian Institute of Technology, and Manuel Paris from GAIN. So I will introduce even more, okay, each of the speakers when I will give them for the first time the floor. Let me explain to you how we will have our discussion today. We are going to separate the whole discussion in two parts. The first part, it has a double somehow, let's say, goal. Apart from giving a structure to the discussion, we will try also to use it in order to present very few from the policy recommendations of TeRRItoria project that it is ending this at the end of this month. And we will accompany all of these policy recommendations with examples so that you will see how the territorial partners helped us through a very thorough learning process that we followed for almost all of the 3 years in the TeRRItoria project. And we ended up with these policy recommendations after a lot of collaboration that we had with all of the partners. So as I said, we will have a kind of a presentation, and the presentation will be also a discussion at the same time with the policy recommendations that, again, as I said, okay, it's very few of them, just 1 or 2, okay, from each of the things that I will present here, okay, as a structure. So the recommendations, how we structure them in the policy recommendation document, it's 2 parts, okay. We have recommendations and suggestions, and the recommendations are the recommendations for the design stage that you will have of an experiment that it will include RRI, the implementation stage, but also the monitoring and evaluation stage. And a second part, okay, which is suggestions, some overall suggestions and suggestions on enhancing sustainability. So the recommendations for integrating RRI principles into the design stage of regional innovation policies and S3, including the entrepreneurial discovery process, I will start with some collaborative research and innovation agendas and inclusive engagement. It's recommendations that they will address the integration of RRI principles and dimensions into the design, as I said, okay, and development stage after that of the regional innovation policies. Let's start with this one. Okay, so in order to engage citizens who have been repeatedly proven to be the most hard to get audience, the territory should firstly initiate the appropriate capacity building activities. These can be short-term activities, e.g. single training events, or long-term activities, e.g. developing relevant university curricula in regional universities. So the main idea behind this is that if you want to talk to the people, okay, you have to train them first in order to be able to understand, and after that you will have stronger engagement. Another recommendation was that the development of collaborative research and innovation agendas can build on the challenge-based approach that's ensuring that regional needs and problems are genuinely considered. Now, at this point, in order to see what I meant that it will be a presentation, but at the same time a discussion, I will ask the first of our speakers, okay, which is Christian Manticone. Christian works for Arte, and he will try to share the experience that they had, and it led us, okay, together with other experience from other partners, okay, to such kind of a recommendation. Christian?
Yeah, thank you, George. So basically, we have tried to develop and design this kind of collaborative RRI agendas, and we are deeply in the process now. We are experimenting this thing in trying to co-design a grant scheme that allows the territorial partners to co-design RRI agendas. This is not easy because our research and innovation ecosystem has been basically based on a high level of commitment and engagement of research labs and innovation centers. So territories and civil society organization and citizens themselves have not been really involved in research and innovation projects so far. So what we're trying to do is basically to include them in the first part of shaping the overall smart specialization strategy, which is the basis of the response of the research and innovation agenda that the government will design in the next future in a few months. The second thing is that we made the work together with regional officers working on designing the grant schemes on what does it mean to apply a challenge-based and mission-oriented approach. So we basically involved them at the very beginning of the project beginning. It was at the end of 2019 and start of 2020. We involved them in a kind of focus group to understand which would be a way to use this challenge-based approach. At the moment, our smart specialization strategy is designed on 15 different challenges. We can call it challenges, even they are not designed in this way with the Mazzucato challenge-based approach, but they are kind of thematic areas in which challenge can be designed together with the territories. And we are, the regional government is involving cities and other territories in designing those so-called transformative urban agendas for sustainability, which are a part of the Axis 5 of the cohesion policy. So the part of a Europe open to citizens. We as an innovation agency, as the development agency of the region, are supporting this process in different ways. And we are trying to adapt TeRRItoria methodologies to that approach in order to try to understand how to involve and engage territories in defining those agendas based on needs and problems they find in their territories. I think that can be enough for now.
Thank you, Christian. Christian is from Arter and represents really the region of Emilia-Romagna that was one of the territorial partners in TeRRItoria. Moving on to another recommendation, different fields and disciplines should be represented in the consultation activities. One should avoid involving representatives coming exclusively from science, technology, innovation related fields or natural sciences. It is a kind of a recommendation that you should include everyone in these kind of discussions. Also, target stakeholders should be engaged early in the design process, and a follow-up communication with them should always be pursued. If possible, also to have follow-up synergies as well. It is then easier to retain or even extend the regional connections and build networks. I will ask now Kalitsa Pantazi, that is from the region of Central Macedonia, to share with us her experience regarding this.
Thank you, George. Hello, everybody. I'm so happy to be here with you today. Yes, that was our first starting point, George, and it was something that we really dedicate a lot of time and effort to choose our target groups to be representative and to be from all the helixes of the quadruple helix. Actually, when we started contacting them, it was the time when all the community were really shocked and really getting to understand all this big problem with sexual harassment in the working places. So everybody felt like this was an opportunity to discuss more about gender equality and in general inequalities in the working places. They find our co-creation process as a path to be more involved, to learn more, to discuss, and even propose measures that could comfort all kind of bias in their working environment, and maybe change a little bit the gender status in their ecosystem, in the research and innovation ecosystem. Also, when designing our co-creation process, we also wanted to do the public engagement as a two-way process. We didn't want our participants to just answer questions or just provide ideas and solutions. We want them to feel like part of the product, to be important in the whole procedure. So we were very consistent in the follow-up communication. We created this Google Doc that they could also put ideas and comments even after the online meetings. We oftenly figure out that they were very interested in the topic of equality and gender issues. So we decided to make parallel events in order to have discussions with experts about this issue, and we got feedback each time from these events, both from the society representatives and also from the academia or the industry. So this is how we planned our experiment in order to be productive.
Thank you, Kalitsa. Kalitsa is from the region of Central Macedonia, another territorial partner of the TeRRItoria project, and they were implementing a gender equality plan for the research performing organizations in the region. So another point, it was that new coalitions can be formed through various consultation meetings, events, or workshops. The regional open innovation platforms can particularly create an encouraging environment. Christian, again, I would like to share the experience from Emilia-Romagna, especially in the regional open innovation platforms.
Yeah, thank you, George. So the platform has been built during the 2018-2019 through a co-design process. So we've been designing the platform together with a stakeholder that had to be using that in the future. During the pandemic crisis, it has been really useful as a tool to involve and to engage people, not only from research institutions and universities, but even other people in contributing to the design, really, to the second version of the smart facilitation strategy, basically through two different means. They were allowed to comment some documents that were prepared by us and the government and the regional government, together with some experts from clusters, universities, innovation centers, and technopoles, by all the research and innovation ecosystem. And then they have been asked through a survey, which was well constructed, to define which could be the thematic priorities to work on in the next futures, and then to contribute to these thematic priorities and to transversal principles. And one of those principles, which I found to be one of the most interesting one by the participants, more than 400 participants among comments and participants to the survey. One of those principles has been the responsible research and innovation. So through that consultation with an online tool, which was not easy because it was the first time for us to make such a kind of consultation through this kind of collaborative platform, we understood that the principle of responsible research and innovation was really useful to design the future steps of the strategy in terms of implementation and even of getting the grants done for financing all those thematic priorities. So basically, we think that it has been a good tool in order to get some feedbacks, but even to engage people in understanding how to go further.
The next one, the sample of involved actors can be widened through the following: capitalizing on organizational mapping, capitalizing on territorial networks, also providing incentives to the various stakeholders not to participate in the research innovation processes. I will ask, first of all, Daniele, in knowledge and innovation KNI, and they were the expert partners that were supporting the Emilia Romagna.
I see this kind of mapping is very important activity. Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. In fact, an added value of the territorial RRI, all in all, is that of aiming to reach and involve stakeholders and actors other than the big actors who are usually mobilized in regional innovation policies, but a theoretical capacity to identify the potential actors and suitable methods are needed. And mapping is one of these methods. In the initial phase of TeRRItoria, under the coordination of ARC Fund, the partners were engaged, each in their respective territory, to map, among others, those actors that could be useful for the detailed design and implementation of the 5 experiments. All these using specific documents, document analysis grids, to arrive at structured information. For instance, not a simple list of actors, but the possible link of these actors with a given RRI key. In this respect, a plurality and diversity of actors have been considered, including those that are less institutionalized, for instance, community-based organization or non-traditional religious communities, women associations, schools, labor unions, professional associations, sport association, local media, and so on. Beside, of course, the traditional R&I actors such as business, researchers, and science mediators. Then a map of approach, policies, and tools for territorial RRI was also created by KNI based on 2 inventories in cooperation with CERC, focused on inspiring bottom-up governance innovation practices and RRI governance innovation practices in European Union funded projects. The mapping activity in general is an important form of knowledge management, that is, using the knowledge stored in different archives and sources. Clearly, it is a matter not only of reusing written and online sources that are already available, but exploring these sources with new questions, and also, when possible, soliciting living sources such as expert and key informats to discovering something new. Just to conclude, I remember an experience in Tunisia in the 90s, a study on organizations in the field of environment. The official documents mentioned about 50 associations in this field, officially listed in a national register. But going deeper, with some interviews and consultation, we discovered that beyond the labels, the actors who dealt with the environment on the territory, there were several hundreds. Sport clubs that did maintenance of the green, diving clubs that did sea cleaning, and so on. So, to conclude, also for the future, never stop at the official labels and look for the substance using theory and method.
Thank you, Daniele. Kalitsa, could you also very briefly, tell us something about how you managed there to widen the sample of involved actors providing incentives, and what do we mean with something like that in your case?
Yes, sure. As we said before, we worked on drafting a gender equality plan for the organizations on the field of research and innovation. When speaking about gender equality, of course, you can understand that there are many ethical incentives to everyone, and it was very well received from the organizations. But these gender equality plans were and still very strongly supported by the Commission itself. So by the time we started discussing about the gender equality plans, the European Commission launched this new criteria for the Horizon Europe program. So from now on, for all the calls for proposals with deadlines from 2022 and onwards, the various organizations that are applying for any proposal should have a gender equality plan as a precondition. So the relative organizations, the research and innovation organizations that took part in our workshops and the co-creation procedure strongly engaged to it because they found it as a good opportunity, as a serious starting point for fulfilling this very concrete criteria in Horizon Europe. So we are so lucky that these two initiatives took place at the same time, more or less. It was really strong for them.
Thank you, Kalitsa. Let's move on. We go to the openness and transparency, now part of the recommendations. The design processes of regional R&I policies should be open and transparent to the wider public, e.g. through open consultation initiatives. And in this case, the public and the interested stakeholders can be genuinely involved in the construction of the territory's vision, thus not allowing regional agendas to be hijacked by established interests and experts. I will ask now Desislava.
Thank you, George.
Yes. Okay, Desislava Koleva is from the municipality of Gabrovo, where the municipality of Gabrovo was also a territorial partner, and they managed to have a determined policy to lead the economic development in the region through science and technology. And they were also being awarded last year by the European Committee of the Regions as a European entrepreneurial region. So I'm sure that Desislava has many things to share with us.
Thank you, George. Yes, of course, we have this prize, and this is a big honor, but also a very big responsibility. What I want to share with you today is that because of TeRRItoria project, which was implemented in the time when COVID pandemic situation entered into our life, and also we start to plan the new programming period. That was a very great opportunity for us to combine efforts with all the partners in TeRRItoria project to develop our public engagement plan for the supporting of development and implementation of our smart specialization strategy. And because we have this prize, we have to be very, very focused on the efforts of all the stakeholders. And because Gabrovo is a very industrial region, and we have a very industrial profile. In fact, we have more than 50% of our employees in industry. That engage us to be very open and transparent during the process of designing and implementation of all policies related to economic development and smart specialization. And within this period of 2 years of design and implementation, in fact, we have exchanged and replaced the physical events like introductory meetings, like different kind of workshops and capacity building events to online surveys. And that was our challenge during the process, and accompanied by the request of all the stakeholders to be inclusive in the process. That was a very big challenge for us. But in fact, at the end, we have developed a strategy and a public engagement plan. And I can start with that, in fact, in our innovation ecosystem, we have a very big business family. More than 80% from these 3,600 companies are represented by their branch organizations, but these companies are mostly oriented in smart specialization sectors as mechatronics, ICT, and fuel industries, which is also important to shape the strategy. And the process started in February 2020 when we started with a general introductory meeting where we invited all the participants and we presented RRI concept. And we decided to continue with surveys because March 2020 COVID started, and we made surveys with youth population in perspective of educational system. We made a survey with business community where we had a very big feedback because of the online opportunities of surveys, and this was very important for us. And we had also rural areas meeting organized, which finished with a very big summit, which was also physical. At the end of the day, we decided to establish a focus group. The focus group is economy, innovations, and human capital. And in fact, in this focus group, we invited all the representatives of leading sectors in our smart specialization areas. Also the Technical University of Gabrovo, the new established Regional Innovation Center, the Chamber of Commerce and Industry, NGOs, business-oriented, all the sectors connected to services to businesses, and also the civic society. The process was fully open, and all the publications have been put on the website of the municipality with a focus on smart specialization strategy development. But thanks to our fund, and which is our regional partner, we decided to develop this public engagement plan in which we define the roles and responsibilities of all stakeholders in our ecosystem, which will be very supportive for the implementation of our S3 strategy. That was the most important result from our participation in TeRRItoria project, because the biggest challenge in the past was related to insufficient engagement of the public to support S3, and the weak cooperation between the university researchers and companies I hope that in the future we have already started this initiative, and we also implement some projects with industry. We start to work about carbon neutrality with them. That will be very supportive. So I can conclude that the results of our experiment are brilliant, and we will implement in our daily work, because policy making for us is an open and transparent process, and the results are really important to be shared with the community.
Thank you, Desislava. I believe that everyone now understood, okay, how well you manage this thing, okay, to generally involve everyone in this TeRRitoria's building up, okay, this TeRRitoria's vision. So, entrepreneurial discovery process, I will just mention one, okay, the benefits of RRI and public engagement on EDP outcomes should be promoted. It should be systematically highlighted that the integration of RRI principles in EDP facilitates the unleashing of local creativity, and this way it ensures greater competitiveness and economic growth. It is not enough, you know, in other words, to do things, okay, people also should understand and perceive that you are doing all of these things, so promote all of the benefits of including RRI. And we are moving to the implementation stage now, the recommendations for integrating RRI principles in the implementation stage. And here, okay, yeah, we formed these recommendations with reference to the integration of each one to the 4 dimensions of RRI. So anticipation, first of all, S3 and other regional innovation policies can enhance anticipation by realizing foresight exercises, for example, future scenario exercises and forecasting, so that the S3 decision making is based on a set of logical and anticipated assumptions. Developing anticipatory governance mechanism by integrating features, principles of technology assessment, employing theories of change when setting new goals, and consulting mission-oriented approaches. In this way, RRI is also integrated into S3 in a sustainable way. I will ask again, Christian, okay, but please do your best to answer in 2-3 minutes. I know that you were doing a lot of things, okay, related to that.
Yeah, basically, I will focus on the first one, which is we are using futures and foresight techniques to on the thematic priority of health and well-being, involving stakeholders to design possible futures in order to co-create a grand mechanism to answer, to solve this challenge, territorial partners together with research lab and innovation labs. This is basically an approach that we have been taking from another region, which is Catalonia, which is adopting this kind of collaborative agendas through future anticipation scenarios. And so we are in the finishing the experiment in these days, and we will have to discuss next Tuesday on our public event the main results. Sorry for the public event will be only in Italian. The results of this exercise, and what we found out is that there is really a need to change, basically, in order to anticipate the futures and to use those anticipatory governance mechanisms, which is a framework developed by the OECD. There is a need to change the relation among the territorial actor in the R&I ecosystem, and really to involve more and more civil society organization in shaping challenges and shaping the priorities of research and innovation through the establishing of those territorial agendas and participatory agendas. Last thing, the theory of change, which is a framework used basically in social impact evaluation, we found it could be useful in the project design phase when responding to a grant, to a regional grant. It could be useful in order to help a researcher to design a project not based on outputs, on the inputs they have, but based on impact they can produce at territorial level. And that's not easy. We've seen through the analysis of past projects which have been applied to regional grants that's not easy. There is a capacity building to do for them and for regional officers too.
Thank you so much, Christian. The next, inclusiveness of S3 and other regional innovation policies can be enhanced by ensuring that the R&I agendas developed are truly collaborative, building on intra-regional collaboration, and that the different actors' perspectives and interests are represented there. When attempting, though, to include different actors' perspectives and interests, potential conflicts may emerge. This should be managed at all times and turn into sources of knowledge and opportunities. To manage the conflicts, present the target topic as a win-win situation to all sides, or a priori initiate something that it is beneficial to all sides, even for different reasons. At this point, I will ask Zoya, that she's the program director of ARC Fund, that was and the expert partner in Bulgaria for Gabrovo, to share with us especially how to handle conflicts.
Thank you, George. Hello to everyone once again. Well, Desislava already covered a lot from what I also planned to say, so I will just complement. First of all, conflicts among stakeholders may result from differences, discrepancies, not only in interest, but also in values and levels of power. And therefore, when we have public and stakeholder engagement activities to achieve a genuine inclusiveness in a territory during the policy design or policy implementation, conflict management should be focused on reaching an outcome that is acceptable to all major stakeholder groups which are involved in this process. For the inclusiveness approach of Gabrovo during the development of the RIS S3 strategy, and the public engagement plan, what I can say is that it was a truly holistic approach. It was already mentioned that a lot of regional studies have been conducted and all major stakeholder groups have been involved. Now, how conflicts, to say potential conflicts, have been avoided in Gabrovo, there were two major factors for this. First of all, there was at the time a common vision for the sustainable development of Gabrovo, which was elaborated based on an in-depth survey through interviews with 400 households on the territory of Gabrovo. So this was, how to say, the far-reaching objective, but at the same time, there was a more pragmatic or more practical objective. It was the development of the smart specialization strategy. So I would like to stress the work of this focus group, which was established in Gabrovo on economy, innovation, and human capital. First of all, it was a focus group where all major stakeholders were represented, which means that their interests were represented as well. And the benefits of establishing this focus group, which worked throughout the whole process until the very end of December last year. First of all, public and stakeholder engagement was perceived as a necessary component of the territorial development and for the elaboration of the local smart specialization strategy. This group, it was not a one-off meeting of the group. There were regular meetings of the group itself, but also regular meetings with the society at large, so that the group could present the results of its work. So working together for such a long period of time, it means that they were involved or engaged in joint work and in joint elaboration and ownership of results, which are the S3, and then also the public engagement plan, which is now developed to the implementation, to support the implementation of S3 until 2027. And these were the two major outcomes of this truly holistic approach to include all stakeholders, over a long period of time, not only during the design of the transformative experiment, but also during its implementation. And I'm very much for trying to avoid conflicts through inclusiveness rather than to try to address conflicts during the work of different expert groups or focus group or whatever types of formats are used. So this is what I have to say at this time.
Thank you, Zoya, for sharing that with us. Inclusiveness of S3 and other regional innovation policies can be enhanced by ensuring that a reference to equality principles and inclusiveness is included in the S3 regional policy and strategic document. Kalitsa, please, in a minute also, you could share what happened in the region of Central Macedonia.
Yes, exactly. So what you are just told us, George. In the region of Central Macedonia, we know that policies can no longer be a product of some wiser lead or a centralized guide. We are now know that the policies about innovation should take into consideration the principles that have been co-designed and co-approved in our gender equality plan. So as policies are getting real and measurable only through actual funds, we are taking a step forward by promoting the insertion of equality principles in our new revised document of the RIS3. So this document is expected to integrate gender equality principles within 3 different contexts. First of all, as an introduction part in a theoretical context, where a declaration of principles is expected to be included. And Sal mentioned that gender issues and gender equality principles will be considered in the whole strategy. Of course, we want to also introduce equality in the context of establishing new gender indicators for funding new initiatives. It could be something like specific objectives of the projects, like increasing of women involvement in STEM sciences, or increasing of women starting innovative startups, or increasing the percentage of women in positions of responsibility in research and development activities. And of course, we introduced and suggested in the context of to introduce equality in the context of adapting gender indicators for monitoring the results of the RIS3 strategy.
Thank you, Kalitsa, for sharing this very significant impact of TeRRItoria to your region. Reflexivity. To foster the reflexivity of S3 and regional innovation policies, self-analysis and self-criticism should always be made while designing and implementing such policies. Feedback received should be appreciated at all times and be accompanied at the same time by a receptive to change attitude. About responsiveness, responsiveness signifies keeping up with the new developments, particularly new EU, national, local policies, priorities and directions, new scientific, technological and societal trends, as well as new societal political pressures, e.g. gender issues. All of this should be considered for updating or readjusting the content of the policies. Slava, please try in very briefly to say something here.
I will say something which is important. Regional specificity should be, and regional needs should be implemented in all the policies connected to local and regional level, but having in mind all the national and EU programs. Of course, the political pressure is very important factor, and for example, for Bulgaria, we had a very big political crisis in the last year, which was the reason for delay of the national framework and the planning process for the new programming period, which reflect to our work on policy making. But at the same time, there is a positive effect because now all the stakeholders are together. There is a consortium which is working for the carbon neutrality following the Green Deal agenda. And I think that all the actors now have the same problem, and also the public and the private sector which means that we can combine the efforts and update and readjust our policies in accordance with the environment. And this is very global. I don't think that this is a problem not only of Gabrovo, but all the partners meet together on this stage. And we have to be very careful for the future of Europe. And I think that we have to be more business driven, because business have better sense than us. And they see what's happened with the markets, with the raw materials, with the prices of energy. And now what is important to focus on the most important areas of supporting and incentives. And this is teamwork.
Thank you, Desislav, for sharing this. Moving on to the recommendations of integrating RRI principles and dimensions into the monitoring now and evaluation stage. RRI-driven monitoring and evaluation principles of social responsibility can be integrated into the S3 impact assessment, since social responsibility attempts to ensure that there is balance between economic growth and the welfare of society and the environment. And about monitoring and evaluating the RRI impact, few more suggestions. Evaluation criteria for the funding of RNI projects could also assess the impact specifically related to RRI keys. In that case, an appropriate RRI, of course, oriented capacity building of the evaluators is advised to take place. Now moving on to the suggestions, some overall suggestions, as I said, like regional size matters, and particularly urban and rural areas follow different paths. We saw a few of the comments, that people mentioned before, that they were revealing that such regional features should always be considered when developing RRI-driven regional policies. Another suggestion, it was changes to regional structures, including political shifts, may create implications. One should be prepared for effects of such changes on regional policies. That was thoroughly discussed in many of our mutual learning workshops. And suggestions for enhancing the sustainability of RRI-driven regional policies and the results. Finding an actor in charge of anchoring the results is a prerequisite. Official bodies and/or change agents are considerable allies for undertaking this role and contributing to the continuation of achieved results. Again, very briefly, in 1 or 2 minutes, Khalitsa, you could share also your experience with us.
Yes, of course. In parallel with our co-creation activities in the region of Southern Macedonia, we established a Gender Equality Committee in July 2020. This was our first step towards sustainable institutional change, as the committee will also operate after the end of the TeRRItoria project. The committee is appointed by the Regional Council and consists of members from various municipalities of the region, all chambers of the region as well, all the levels of education, the women organizations, and the General Secretariat of Gender Equality. The purpose of the committee is to submit proposals to the regional institutions on promoting gender equality in political, economic, and social life. The committee is just starting to work, and they have made some, let's say, events to know the environment. And now, together with us as Directorate of Innovation and with the region's administration, they are working on establishing a gender equality office in the region in order to promote, to draft and monitor our own self-tailored gender equality plan.
Great, thank you, Khalitsa. It was a very good example to understand that finding an actor, it offers sustainability to the project. Funding and follow-up activities can considerably enhance the result sustainability. Emphasis is primarily placed on EU and national funding. Alternatives are private-public partnerships, funding, crowd funding, etc. It should be reminded, however, that follow-up funding is not a panacea for everything. Regional improvised actions may be more effective for an effective knowledge spillover.
I fully agree with you.
Yeah.
Yes, because we are ambassadors of our own regional resources, and we try to push regional resources to be more effectively used in implementation of policies. What I mentioned, I want to share with you our experience with green startup companies growing into the cluster of mechatronics, which is an idea of our youngsters to develop monitoring of air, water, and traffic systems, which can be used for smart cities. And I think that in this situation, when everywhere global markets are very unstable and all the companies try to survive, I think that this is the way how we have to be very flexible and not only rely on the EU funding and national funding, but to find the more efficient ways of public-private partnerships. Another example is our new initiative for carbon neutral industrial zone, where we are making investigation and find companies creating capacity in alternative energy sources and trying to push them to install more alternative energy installations in order to co-share energy and to work more efficiently in the industrial zone. So this is one idea which is set in our smart civilization strategy. This is just an example, but this is also important to engage all the players on the market and service providers, especially when we talk about energy suppliers and gas suppliers. And all these companies should be one family and living in one territory, functioning there. We are just placing this as a very important tool to foster and to use it more effectively for the implementation of this knowledge of our university and technologies and young people involved, and to make it really happen. We have to rely on our power, and we can use, of course, EU and national funding, but what is important for the programs in the future, they should be more public-private driven, and business should be inside. This is quite important for us.
Slava, thank you a lot for sharing that, okay, and supporting our recommendation here. So the responsible research and innovation is there for way more than a decade as an operative concept, being present in large-scale programs, but with the Science with and for Society program of Horizon 2020, it has supported many other local and regional implementations of RRI. It's not just TeRRItoria that was, the project. So we shared, and we are glad that we had the opportunity to share with you some of our recommendations that we are going to have in the recommendation policy document that in next month, okay, it will be available in public. And we'll be glad if you will find these initial things that we share with you interesting, and you will try to read all of the recommendations that we have. But there were other projects. So slowly I will start, now opening our discussion and include even more views apart from territorial partners. I will start with Zoya, okay, that apart from being a member, okay, her organization to TeRRItoria project, she's also the coordinator of RRI Leaders project. So Zoya, considering the mapping exercises that you have carried out in 2 RRI projects, okay, both TeRRItoria and RRI Leaders, what is the current situation of RRI in European regions?
Thank you, George. Well, I have prepared based on this project in which we are the coordinators, some more insights in addition to what we have from TeRRItoria, and I will quickly present what is the situation. First of all, the different regions which engaged in RRI, say, projects The situation is really very diverse. This is the first I have to say. For instance, in RRI leaders, we are focused on concrete policy areas in the municipal regional development, and these policy areas range from energy transformation and energy transition to policy for supporting local innovations, to policy for young people and entrepreneurship, also digitalization. And studying mapping the different knowledge and experience of the major stakeholder groups, what we have found out is that, of course, research and academia are the ones who best know and apply the RRI framework. In terms of open access, though, policy on open access to research data still needs to be developed, and there are issues there. Regretfully, gender equality is not perceived as a problem in many of even of the research and academia organizations, and it's very narrowly understood as equal numbers of men and women in research, while issues related, for instance, to equal participation of women in research or in higher positions, I mean managerial positions in research and academia, glass ceiling issues, etc., they are not addressed. Issues related to gender equality as a topic in research activities are also not considered. While public engagement is perceived by research and academia to have a major role in setting research and educational agendas, this remains largely limited only to research projects where such activities are foreseen. Science communication emerged as a topic, which is very weakly developed, not to say not developed at all, at least in Bulgaria. And its importance for building trust in science among the regional stakeholders and the general population has been stressed upon. And here, responsiveness and reflexivities are prominent dimensions in research and academia, as they are applied by focusing and addressing needs of local community. About policymakers and civil society organizations, the overall RRI framework and the individual keys are not well known, but some keys are practiced by these organizations. Gender disbalance in the regional and local politics is an issue because the number of women who are involved as community leaders or active politicians is still insufficient. Public engagement is key to facilitate the progress of RRI policy development, but there is an express need for more awareness raising and involvement of population in various measures for policy implementation. This was also mentioned so far. Anticipation is recognized as very important, and science-based policy making, as well as visioning and long-term strategies, are perceived as crucial for the overall territorial development, but still not very much practice. And responsiveness and reflexivities are two dimensions that need to be improved, since there are still a lot of barriers existing to their implementation. And just a few words on the businesses and business organizations. Public engagement is not practiced. Ethics is formalized through different codes of conduct and in-house policies for corporate social responsibility. While science education is considered by businesses as a very important element for developing research and business innovation, very few cases were identified about collaboration between businesses and research and academia. And anticipation and responsiveness are not sufficiently incorporated into the business strategies. If I may just summarize for the territories in the TeRRItoria project, based on the mapping, public engagement is the most relevant RRI key to the participating territories, followed by science education and research and innovation governance, while gender equality, ethics, and open access at the time of mapping were perceived as less important, but I hope that during these 2 years after the mapping and the implementation of the transformative experiments, these attitudes have changed considerably. This is what I have to say on the situation in the territories.
Thank you so much, Zoe. I'm sure they did. As I said, okay, we'll open more. Okay, the discussion. I want you also to write in the chat your questions, because at the point we will start also seeing your questions. I will introduce one more now that we have in our panel, Manuel Paris. He's participating in the RRI to scale, and Galicia is a region in the northwest of Spain that is effectively implementing RRI actions. They have an advanced system of governance of their regional strategies. Its development agency, okay, again, that Manuel Paris works there. He has recently participated in 2 RRI projects, okay, the Interreg Marie Curie project and RRI to scale. So, Manuel, thank you for joining our roundtable. How has RRI improved your regional strategies in Galicia? What changes are you implementing as a result of those 2 projects that I just mentioned? And what kind of recommendations you could have, okay, for embedding RRI in regional policies for economic development?
Hi, good morning. Thanks for the invitation. Well, it is a quite long question. Try to keep it brief. I would like to say, mentioning that maybe RRI in regions like ours did not start, let's say, when we started to work in this kind of projects in Marie or in RRI to scale. I think that the need to elaborate an S3 strategy for some of regions like ours was a challenge in the moment it happened, because we had no experience of this kind of co-design, co-working, and so we already had to introduce some of the elements of the RRI were introduced for the first time, for instance, in our region in that time, mainly regarding the involvement of stakeholders. I think that was the main challenge, and it was not only a challenge for the public administration, but it's also a challenge for the stakeholders themselves, because if there is not this culture behind of collaborating, of co-designing at the beginning, there is the challenges on both sides. So, but then the participation in these 2 projects help us to have a more structured, let's say, strategy in this regard on what to do and where to put the focus if we wanted to improve our practices when it comes to designing and implementing innovation strategies and innovation programs. So as main results that I can mention in practice is that, for instance, one of the now all regions in Europe, we are implementing or promoting digital innovation hubs. So for that, we designed a regional strategy, which is the regional strategy on digital innovation hubs. And there we have introduced some elements of RRI. So they are elements coming from the lessons learned in these projects. Okay, it is especially on the impact of the strategy, but also an element that was recently mentioned today. It was how to make it monitoring of the strategy using RRI elements. The other big, I would say, impact is in one other strategy, other initiative we have to promote aeronautics in the region. We are using public procurement of innovation as a tool to support this initiative, and in the calls we have been designing over the past years. We have introduced let's say, the need to increase the social impact of the proposals we receive. So there's a specific section in the calls that is compulsory to be fulfilled. And in the end, it means somewhere between 15 and 20% of the total, let's say, mark that a proposal gets. And this is something that we didn't have before. We expect these strategies to have much impact on education. we want them to contribute to increase the access of students to STEM careers, especially women. So the proposers must introduce elements to support this. And I think the final element I can mention is that during the elaboration of the new S3 strategy, for the first time, we organize activities with the stakeholders, but not, let's say, formal ones in the offices and in the premises of the administration. But we went out in the street and we organized kind of, I wouldn't say festivals, but something like looking very playful and informal, to invite people to come and share their thoughts with us, and make proposals, and also comment about initiatives we have. And this was made on purpose in, let's say, in summer, I mean, in days with good weather, and especially on the weekends where people have more time to be relaxed and not so in such a hurry. I think these three elements have been, let's say, the most the ones who have meant a bigger difference compared to what we were doing before. And you have to say, it's, I mean, a suggestion or a recommendation is involve politicians from the very beginning. This is something that policy, I mean, public servants, sometimes we tend to not to go so, I mean, we may sometimes take some time to do this, but I think it is very necessary to have this from the very beginning.
Yeah, I totally agree. Thank you so much, Manuel. And I will agree also that you need very innovative ways in order to manage, you know, to involve the citizens. And I like the thing that you said, that it has to be a good weather. Okay, so you have to create something, really a very nice environment and an atmosphere for them to join. I will welcome now also Marianne Horlesberger from the TeRRI project. The TeRRI project has focused on the transition from traditional industries to digitization, and the project has established roadmaps for responsible transition, being more inclusive and involving stakeholders. So, Marianne, thank you for accepting our invitation and joining us. What would be the legacy of the project? What institutional changes have taken place as a result of participating in this TeRRI project? And has the digitalization been targeted only at companies or to society in general?
Good afternoon from my side. Thank you very much for this invitation. It's a great pleasure to be with us, with you this afternoon. TeRRI does not focus on this specific institutional change. TeRRI is considers the innovation ecosystem in the territory. We have three territories: Styria in Austria, Grand Est in France, and Värmland in Sweden. And there we do more or less, we can say, ROI by design. We involve all the stakeholders coming from science and research, from industry and business, from education. We have schools with us in each of the territory. And of course, from public administration. And as you already mentioned, to get civil society involved is very, very difficult. We have already discussed in our project, we would have to pay them the travel and also the time they spend with us. But now we don't have the money for that. When we include them in the discussion, when we apply forward-looking methodologies such as foresight or road mapping, as it is here in TeRRI, then we anticipate, we are transparent, we are diverse in these workshops. So we apply these ROI process dimensions. And by developing futures together with all the affected stakeholders, we address also, of course, the gender, the ethics, open transparency, and so on. And so we can say we address these institutional changes indirectly. However, when we work out the roadmap, and really we have already developed action plans, there they address exactly actions for how to get more students in science education, and especially girls. And we have defined several actions in each of these territories, but also how to address ethics. When it comes to digitalization, ethics is a big issue everywhere. And so we emphasize on this digitalization, but by working with RRI. And yeah, the whole project, the whole digital project is a road mapping. And so we go through from the stock taking, from the mapping, over the developing the vision statement together with the affected stakeholders. And then we work out together, we co-create together with the stakeholders the goals, the futures, and then we derive the action plans. And so we integrate also the society. Of course, the idea is the digitalization, this transformation to a digitalized industry region is important for the whole society in these territories, because this region should be attractive to live, to work, and to have good possibilities for the children and for universities and interesting jobs. And we can say there are several actions and several goals that address this very clearly.
Thank you, Marianne. I have many more questions, okay, and you challenge you, but I want to give also the floor to the people that they participate in this discussion. I saw that things were happening in the chat. Okay, I cannot follow that 100%. So, Ivana, could you help me with that? Are there some questions in the chat that we could, take now?
Yes, indeed. So we have a question from Joost Cooper. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. So this is a question from Overijssel in the Netherlands. So far, business actors are positioned central as bears discovering the honey. Strict interpretation of entrepreneurial discovery process. Do the TeRRItoria partners in the next EFRDOP 2022 to 2027 prioritize project ideas of civic actors over the usual business partners? Or do you think that civic actors such as citizen groups and public not-for-profit actors will align with business in the classical business innovation projects? How much civic entrepreneurship to address societal challenges in innovation programs, to put in short? So we have already received a question, an answer from Christian Mancinone from Arter, but then maybe perhaps someone else would like to answer this question.
Who would like to comment or answer this question? Christian, because you were active already, do you want to share some things with us?
I can just share what I shared in the chat, that at national level, and this morning there is an ongoing debate on the societal readiness level as part of the calls on the supporting scheme for the investment, and being at the same level at the technological readiness level. I think that the national government has included that part and in the national research plan and in the national resilience and recovery plan. Still, we have not seen indicators and other things in the calls, so just because we had no time to go deep in this part. We in Emilia-Romagna are discussing this part of including some societal impact or social impact aspect in monitoring, evaluation, and in in some part of the grant scheme. In fact, I was really interested in what have been said before by Manuel, because I think this is really interesting, and it's really a need in order to convince researchers that there is a social impact in what they're doing in their labs and when they made research projects. And so maybe the only way to convince them is to try to write down those impacts in some parts in the call schemes.
Thank you, Christian. Ivana, do we have another question?
Yes, there was another question from Just, and I see that he is online. Perhaps Just would like to ask the question to our speakers.
He wrote in the chat, I saw it, okay, that there is big noise in his house, okay, and he cannot do that only by chat.
No, I'm perfectly capable.
Okay,
then,
okay, just
but if you hear a high pitch, then I will do it. I cannot respond, but is it?
Yeah, go ahead, just.
Okay. So my second question was also, yeah, that's a bit technical question, but within our operational program, we only our main goal is economic innovation, and for that we use the technology readiness levels. They are widely used, and what we see is that the subsidy spent to innovation projects is best served by a 50-50 share of public investment versus private investment. But if you enlarge the opportunities for civic groups to participate or to bring in social innovation projects, they do not bring the same amount of money with them as co-funding. So that it has proven more difficult to fulfill the indicators, the performance indicators of the program with lots of social innovation kind of projects than if you stick to the more or less fixed 50% investment of entrepreneurs. So that might be a challenge for future operational programs for the next period round, when lots of other public parties are invited to bring in to hand in projects. So is that solely a problem for me or for my region, or do others?
Do we have someone that could share their experience and would like to answer to Just?
May I say something here?
Yes, of course.
I'm not so much aware of how national legislation and national calls on funding innovative and social institutions are made. I know there are some calls in Greece that are dedicated only to social innovation companies or social cooperations. And these calls are with special conditions in order to promote them and in order to give them space to be in the field of funding. Not in the same calls with big enterprises or big companies, but in special calls that are dedicated both in their situation and their scopes, their work. This is the situation in Greece, more or less.
Okay.
Thank you, Kalitsa.
Hi, Just. Good morning.
Manuel.
Hello. Well, about this, I just wanted to share that in one of the projects we're participating, Marie, one of the partners is Tampere County Council, implemented a pilot call on this topic. So it was tailored for this purpose exactly. So it involved in digital, as far as I can remember, okay, digital say developments or innovation in digital systems, with a strong RRI component.
Okay.
And there was a pilot call issued, I think, 2 years ago. And then I think that there is also an interesting initiative in Ireland, which is broadening the scope of impact. Well, it's a program or an initiative, cannot say the name exactly. And it's a program or an initiative that aims to broaden the impact of innovation beyond just academia or economical impact. So it seeks to monitor the other impacts for the, let's say, public money granted to organizations to implement innovation projects. For instance, that Irish initiative has been very inspiring for us, for instance.
Okay. Well, you know me to find me, so
yeah,
let's share that in RRE to scale.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Just. Yeah. Manuel, thank you so much. And since you have your microphone open, okay, let me ask you one final question, because I know that you have to leave a little bit earlier. Is it easier or more complex to implement RRI at regional or local level? Do you see any kind of advantages, disadvantages? Do you see that it is the same thing? What's your experience there?
It depends on the dimension of RRI. It can be easier or more difficult. When you talk to public servants or public administration, we always look very much at the involvement of stakeholders, for instance. That is always a challenge. And that's much easier, for instance, locally than at a regional level. And I think it's because involving people, let's say, at a local level, it's easy because they see the impact for themselves, or we see the impact for ourselves immediately, and we see the consequences. But when it comes to a regional administration, mainly when it is something, I mean, if it's health or something like that, I mean, it depends on the topic too. Because if it's something like in the agency I work for, we deal with industry mainly. We promote innovation in industry, in industrial processes. So most people don't see an interest for them, or don't see the relevance of using their time to collaborate in this regard. So in that, it is, yeah, it's a bit different. Then when it comes to ethical issues, I mean, there are rules that you have to follow, and it may have more implications for initiatives made at a higher level, I think. So it can be easier maybe to establish some rules there than compared to if you go to let's say the more local areas. And when it comes to education, I mean, depends also on the countries. In a country like ours, most of the competence of the administration is at the regional government, whereas in other places it is on the county council. So it is wide range of possibilities and issues. So the only aspect that I see that it is clearly more difficult for the regional government is the involvement of the stakeholders. For the rest, it very much depends on topics, on elements, on dimensions of the RI. There's no one single question, let's say.
Yeah, I agree. And the culture, as you said, okay, it's also a very important factor. And when you go to smaller regions, the effect is way bigger, okay, than if you have a very large region. Thank you, Manuel, for sharing.
And so let me just take the opportunity to say bye, because I have to leave in less than 5 minutes.
Okay. Thank you for joining us.
Okay. Yeah, thanks very much for the invitation. And it's been very interesting to follow so far.
Okay, thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. I will go back to Marianne. Marianne, the TeRRI project relates to responsible transition to digitalization, as we said. And this specific sector has a lot of implications, both in competitiveness of the territories, but also as well as challenges, as privacy, inclusion, equal opportunities, other challenges too. What are your recommendations for other regions to facilitate RRI in the design of ICT policies?
Yeah, I think as I already told you, when we do this RRI approach, RRI by design, this methodology, this forward-looking methodologies together with stakeholder engagement, then we can apply this easily to other territories. We have already done also in TeRRI project. There was for instance, in Lower Austria, we had the plastic sector and RRI approach. When we understand RRI in this way, of course, there are limits, as some speakers already highlighted. For industry, it's a challenge always. However, they have their ethical agendas, and they rely on engineers, and we have not even enough male engineers in Europe, and so on. But however, when we do together this holistic approach, they are with us. They see their technology, their business in a broader context. They see their advantages, for instance, as it was in Lower Austria, where we worked in the plastic sector. So this is a big issue, this sustainability, from considering the whole system from the early beginning, from the development of the material till the recycling the waste and not bringing it to the sea, and how we could manage this. But this is also not only in the technology, but also in the awareness of the whole society, and also in communicating and doing a little bit marketing for all this. I think we have to consider this all together. And therefore we can, when we apply this methodology, we have here, we did in not only in TeRRitoria, but also in TeRRI and in IMRRI. I was also involved in this project. It's about additive manufacturing and RRI. We did also a foresight process there. And so when we bring all them together, then we can easily transfer this to other regions. The crucial aspects, of course, how to get the stakeholders, how to get the affected stakeholders, the stakeholders who will have the power, the legitimacy and the urgency to change something. And if we manage that, we have networkers, we have change agents in the territories. We can apply this approach easily, I would say.
Thank you so much, Marianne. I will remind the audience, okay, that you can write your question to the chat, but also you can just ask for permission, okay, in order to take the floor, okay, and do your question or your suggestion, or share experience, okay, that you have with us on whatever we are discussing. Daniele, I have a difficult question for you. I'm keeping that, you know, towards the end. Because you have a lot of experience and you participate also to many RRI projects and territorial also RRI projects. According to your point of view and experience, which are the main features of this thing that we could call territorial RRI?
Thank you, George. Actually, it's a very difficult question. Territorial RRI is an approach under construction. In our project, we have made available just some first coordinates based mainly on the empirical mapping exercise I mentioned before. We all know the characteristic of RRI in general, but if RRI is applied to the dynamics of the territory, an effort must be made to adapt the model to this dynamics in different contexts. The territory, all territories are now exposed to big transformation, delocalization of industrial production, the local impact of climate change, the international and internal migration, etc. One of the effects is a feeling of dispossession among local communities and the weakening of ties between them and their territories, what we may call deterritorialization. This change go beyond the control of the traditional policy systems. This change need that all actors, all scientific disciplines, all competence and know-hows cooperate and give together a contribution to cope with, and to regain a capacity for local ownership and leadership of social, economic, and technological processes. But how? One way is through active territory-making policies, taking into account all that. I may say territorial RRI becomes the ability of research and innovation actors to contribute to territory making, aimed at a shared, co-built governance of the territory and to strengthen the bonds of a community with its own territory, involving the stakeholders of the quadruple helix, and not only the big actors, as in other approach, but also local actors who are often not involved, as we said before. It is clear that this involvement is necessary for a greater relevance and the impact of the intervention. It is also clear that it is not automatic, as was said on Tuesday, I remember. Intelligence, resources, method are needed. Some important aspects of territory making to me are, for instance, creating a new awareness about the risk run by the territory. For instance, in the TeRRItoria experiment, the risk were detected where the risk of internal brain drain within a region, of depopulation of a region, of gender discrimination, exclusion of civil society in the decision-making about innovation, the separation between R&I and local communities, and so on. Another important aspect is mobilizing a broad set of actors and cooperate to promote change. Another aspect is promoting modification in the relationship between such actors and a consequent modification of the actors themselves. So to conclude, a policy of territory making, and this involves RRI, may have at least two components: a territorial orientation and a governance frameworks. Territorial orientation means the desired change in the territory. For instance, rerouting economic and social activity, empowering actors such as young people and women, strengthening the decision-making, and so on. Here, the RRI keys of gender, public participation, and so on are, of course, crucial. Another component of a policy of territory making is governance frameworks, that is the methods, concrete methods for territory making, what to do. For instance, creating a participative agenda setting system, creating a knowledge co-creation platform, and so on. Here, the 4 RRI dimensions are relevant: inclusiveness, anticipation, and so on. In TeRRItoria, the partners have used, even in different ways, various aspects of the territorial RRI approach, but this emerged from their experiences, which they themselves are talking about during this event. Thank you.
Daniele, thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. Okay, as you said, and as Manuel before said, okay, there are differences. There are many factors that they play a role there, okay, and I believe that in TeRRItoria, yes, we managed to create a good start, okay, and I'm sure that all of the rest of the projects, as we see in today's discussion, also they have many things to share, and at a point we will manage, you know, to mature all of this knowledge that we are gathering from all of these projects, and we will have some more concrete results at the end. I will go back to the Slava. That it is clear that in their experiment, they managed to widen the participation and they had many, many different stakeholders. But I would like now the Slava to try, somehow briefly, to tell us which have been the stakeholders that helped the most in your institutional transformation, how you managed to mobilize them, and try to, summarize the ideas there. Are they still engaged? And how will you ensure their support in the future? So a little bit about sustainability.
So thank you, George. I just want to go back in 2017 and say that some years before TeRRItoria, Gabrovo started to think for the communication with business more proactively and involvement of innovative companies to shape the future of the region. And that support us, and we work very closely with GRC from that time. And we take the methodology how to mobilize all stakeholders in our ecosystem. And in that time, we understood that we miss a very important body, intermediary body, which will accelerate our connections with stakeholders, especially from the business society. In fact, Gabrovo municipality was the founder of the Regional Innovation Center established in 2019, where more than 90% of the members are companies in the region. And this is the most important body at the moment and the most important actor mobilizing all the companies in the region. This is the Regional Innovation Center, and this is a very business-driven NGO. They are also members of EURADA at the moment, and they are preparing new projects which will support the future of our business-driven ecosystem for innovation. But I will not forget also the Technical University of Gabrovo. The researchers decided to establish a new technopark, the second biggest in Bulgaria after Sofia Tech Park. And now we have more than 17 laboratories fully advanced, equipped for provision of different kind of services for experiments and testing, test before invest for companies. Now our Regional Innovation Center will apply for European Digital Hub. And all those two actors, in fact, are the main important stakeholders supporting us in our institutional transformation. But what I just want to mention here and remind you that relying on business sense and to be business driven, mobilizing businesses and portfolio of services provided in the region are the most important for us for policy making. And we are listening to them. They are still engaged, and they are providing us a lot of recommendations during the shaping of phase 3. And we are more regional need-based oriented in our strategy. That's why our bottom-up approach is very important, and we will continue to rely on that. If I not answer to you, I can answer longer.
Slava, thank you so much. I totally support your bottom-up. I'm always, as I was discussing with you in the past, thinking that we have to have top-down and bottom-up at the same time, in our processes. It seemed that you did very interesting work, including so many stakeholders in your project that I find it really, very useful for everyone to know.
Maybe I forget something important also. When you work regionally and involve companies in the region, you have to think about other important actors on national level, and we are mapping them, and we have a memorandum of understanding with the largest private industrial zone, which is in South Bulgaria, and we work close together with Track Economic Zone. So they are also part of our work, and they are also recommending us what is coming, and let's make a new partnership on national level, and we are influencing then the national framework. So this is another approach.
Yeah, you are right. And this way you will also manage to have greater impact, okay, to the larger, wider region around you than, you know, in your small region. Thank you, Desislava. Marianne, I will have one more question for you.
Okay.
What are the main barriers to institutional transformation when aiming to incorporate responsible research and innovation? What are the main difficulties that you have to overcome?
Yeah, when this is Lava, have I pronounced it correctly, just talked, it came to my mind one interesting aspect we haven't discussed so far, I think. I've experience with applying this stakeholder engagement and forward-looking methodologies in the northern part of Europe, in the middle Europe and in the south. And I think it's very interesting for me that how far is a country has developed a democracy influences our work there. To discuss these strategies, this original work is different in Norway or in Sweden or in Styria or in Spain, for instance, because our colleagues in Scandinavia, for instance, they are very used to talk to each other, to exchange, to find a common sense, to find a common strategy and include all the others. And this is different in Styria, for instance, in Austria, or even in Lower Austria. And maybe these are some also barriers for implementing. And specific, I have worked a lot with this innovation ecosystems, and there we have always companies with us, and there are barriers, of course. On the one hand, the lack of engineers, young people, girls and boys, they are not enough here. This is a barrier. Then when we work with companies and talk about open access and transparency, so and in doing innovation at the beginning, when it comes to the basic research, it's okay. So we have open access. However, when we develop, when we do innovation together in a broader community, but it comes to IPRs, to patents, it's difficult. So then it's not possible this way to apply. And also, I think public engagement is difficult sometimes when it comes to this innovation ecosystem, because when we talk to engineers, this requires a kind of science education, a kind of knowledge, or the engineers have to transfer their approaches, their technologies in a different language, so it can be possible to be more easily understood by a broader community. This from my side. This.
Thank you so much, Marianne. Ildi.
Yes, thank you very much, George. It was very interesting to hear all the experiences from the territorial partners of the project, as well as the invited speakers. I just want to add that, in fact, related to public engagement and citizen engagement in general, I think these last 2 years were very, very specific and very valuable experience because of the sanitary situation itself, and have brought lots of interesting aspects into the development processes, also related to RRI and our project. So especially related to digitalization and all the techniques applied. We are now in possession of more tools and different visions, and also a much wider range of experiences to use in the future for citizen engagement processes.
Thank you, Ildi. I should introduce Ildi. She's she's working in the European Science Foundation, and they are the coordinators of TeRRItoria. So she was coordinating us all of these 3 years. Thank you for that.
Thank you for the introduction.
Yeah, and I should introduce myself, okay, that I didn't do that in the beginning, probably at the end I should. I am at CERC. Okay, CERC is a research center established in Thessaloniki in Greece, and we are working with many RRI projects. We worked with many in the past, and we are still working with many now. And I'm also a professor in City College, which is the University of Europe campus in Thessaloniki. I will just give now the floor to each one of you. We have Ivana. What, you have a question, Ivana?
Yes, George, we actually have a question in the chat for Desislava, okay. If we have time.
Yes, I will give the floor to each one, okay, for a minute, so Desislava could answer this question. Desislava, they are asking, while engaging the different actor types, did you encounter difficulties with specific stakeholder combinations, e.g., cooperation between academia and industry, etc.? You may answer that also, okay, and have a closing statement if you want.
I have already put something in the chat, and I mentioned that in the beginning it took us more than some years ago, more than 2 years, to establish a very good partnership between the academia and the business, and we are still working on that, because they are very important part of our work is B2B, fostering B2B connections, and then B2 academia. And what is important now, the program of the Technopark is aligned with the company's needs and the program of the Regional Innovation Center. So they are communicating every day, and this is our approach. And I feel that now they are more business oriented in the university, and especially when we talk about labor force and qualified engineers, because these needs are quite important for the companies at the moment. And specifically talking about trainings and science education, this is when you have advanced technologies, advanced companies in the region, it's kind of responsibility to have very advanced engineers. So the fighting now is on a national level, where the Ministry of Education has to allow to the university to introduce new programs in the training course of the engineers. And this is influenced by the companies. So this is important. And I think that the future of GAVUVU is based on the good relation between companies and academia, and also the good vocational training and education. This is quite important.
Thank you, Desislava. I will take that as a closing also statement. Marianne?
Okay.
Would you like, to close with something, okay, at the end, to mention something as a closing statement?
Yeah, I think RRI, as we understand it now, would need some further development to answer these big challenges in we have the climate change and also the SDGs. However, we have a good foundation now. But what does this mean more also for industry and for all the others? It's easier to do this for science and for education organization, but not so much for the industry. or we understand it in a way, as I said, this ROI by design, then it's easier to be applied. Although we have these challenges, how to get the stakeholders, so we have to be, this is a challenge for all of us, I think, to get the relevant stakeholders involved in these co-creation workshops so that they are satisfied, they get a home with something they have, with an added value, how to create this. So we have to work on this, I think, also.
Marianne, thank you so much. Christian, do you want to say a final word?
Well, just really thanks to all the speakers, because they have given some interesting hints even to understand how to implement the next step, which is about the monitoring and evaluation. And then thanks to the partner, because this has been really a travel into RRI. It was not something really not known for us before the project, and we have learned so much, and we have to work so much to implement really this approach in our organization and in regional policies.
Thank you, Christian. Daniele?
Just a short recommendation about the fact that we are interested in promoting a deep change in our work, promoting our work. It's important, of course, to modify rules and the procedures. It's important to set up a new institutional frameworks, but it's also important to transform behavior and the culture of the involved actor to produce deep effects, a deep impact. So training, communication, awareness raising, tutorship, mentorship, advising, promoting new form of leadership also. So go in depth in our work. This is very important to produce deep change.
Thank you, Daniele. Kalitza, would you like to say something?
Yes, as a closure, just wanted to share with you that as I'm a big fan of social and inclusive innovation, I think that the regions can play a very big role on this and can be pioneers and leaders in the near future with their role as regional governments.
Thank you, Kalitza. Zoya.
Thank you, George. We have listened to presentations by several projects already, and there is no doubt that RRI has a very strong transformative potential, both at the institutional but also at the territorial level, and there is a lot of evidence that has been generated so far. On the other side, RRI as such, plus the air dimensions, these are the dimensions of RRI, beyond the research and academia community, are still not yet known. So still a lot of awareness raising work is needed, I think. We've been discussing a lot about public engagement and the importance of working with the average citizens, but during the presentations of the recommendations, it's evident that for working with citizens and to have them as really good providers of ideas and information and tacit knowledge, they have to be prepared. And in this process of working with citizens, science communication is crucial, because this is this building block in the whole process. This is the translation from the language of science and the language of innovation and high tech to the language of the average citizen, so that they can really understand what it's all about. Regions and municipalities are now facing a double challenge: transformation, digital transformation, and energy transformation and energy transition. And we speak here about resilience and what is the role of RRI, responsible research and innovation, and such in these processes of transition. We still, I believe, at least in the territories which we study in RRI leaders, we still need much more visionary work, long-term strategies, vision building, and horizon for policy making, and in policy making at least 20-25 years ahead of the current day. So all I can say is that we have achieved a lot with TeRRItoria, and we have to be proud with our achievements, the whole consortium. So I'm really satisfied with the work. So this is my concluding sentence.
Thank you so much, Zoya. Ildi?
Yeah, just a little summary. I very much resonate with all the summaries given before me, so I'm not going to repeat that, but I would like to take a second and just focus on promoting the topic of discussion today. So the TeRRItoria project has a major outcome in the form of policy recommendations that will be produced and finalized very soon, and it will be widely promoted as soon as it's done. So I would like to actually promote this deliverable and urge you to keep an eye on the social media channels of the TeRRItoria project, as well as the website, where you will be able to find the policy recommendations for potential exploitation after the project. We are very happy, as Zoya said, with our outputs, and proud to share with you this final deliverable of the project. Thank you, George.
Okay, thank you all so much. Okay, this is the slide that I just said, the last one that I had in the presentation. Thank you for your attention and for the participation. I hope, and I'm sure, okay, that you enjoyed it and you found many useful things that we shared with all of you. And remember that we have a very nice website, okay, that you can find a lot of information. It's not just about the policy recommendations. There are many more public documents that we have there, but a very powerful blog, the newsletters. Okay, there is a lot of information that we could share with you. I will just close the whole thing by saying, as Ildi said, okay, everyone said very nice things at the end. I will not repeat, but I just want to say that RRI really, through its principle, it offers the chance for a more inclusive society. And I will close with that. Thank you all so much. Okay, all the speakers, all of the participants. And I remind you that we have a third day. Attend that too. Okay, there will be excellent presentations also there, and a very nice discussion at the end. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.